What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. It looks like we're having a pretty mixed day for the Bitcoin miners, but in general we are pretty green, so that's nice. And in terms of crypto, Bitcoin and Ethereum, a few other alts are green, but otherwise we've got quite a bit of red over there. And then when looking at the general market, mega caps are pretty green, but we're looking at some pretty small moves, at least from what I'm seeing. Seems like a pretty mixed day and a somewhat unvolatile one, at least from what I see here. And Bitcoin on the chart was unable to break the 50 MA and the 200 MA. They were right together, and we did get a death cross. I would suspect that now we are due to test our supports, test this recent low here, since we failed the 50 MA. Now, I'm going over the 4 hour because it does kind of show that we are reacting to this kind of an uptrend that we had for a while, this ascending channel. You'll see we found resistance right at this 61,500 area. We tried to ride up this channel as support. Once we broke it, we tried to test it to break back in, and it found it as a resistance. I would assume we are probably heading a bit lower. Might be boring over the weekend, and then we start rallying into next week. But until we get a breakout of this longer term pattern, I think we're just going to kind of chop around. Patterns are meant to be broken, and soon this somewhat sideways action will change. And I got something really cool to show you from Julio Moreno. This is the cumulative return on Bitcoin on the halving year. So we're talking 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. 2024 is this blue line that ends right here, and all of the other lines you see ended the year because those are years that we have gotten through. You'll see that we start the year and in the year higher every single time, and it looks like we are set to do the same here in the 2024 cycle. Bitcoin has never ended the year lower than when it started, and in this year Bitcoin started out right around 40,000 or so. So I would say that is like the worst case scenario floor, at least that would be my opinion, and I would jump at the chance to buy Bitcoin at 40,000. I doubt it's going to get there though. Q4, you'll see that in Q4 is where Bitcoin has its most significant rally, the end of the halving year, which makes sense because usually the year after the halving year is where things go really parabolic. And it seems like Q4 is kind of the start of that. What have we seen in every cycle? We have seen Bitcoin end higher from the third quarter to the fourth quarter. In the 2012 halving year, we did see it kind of run up to the fourth quarter, and then it started declining to then go on to a new all-time high. In the 2016 halving year, as well as the 2020 halving year, Q4 was where Bitcoin had its most explosive growth. I think we are shaping up for that in this cycle as well. And looking at this graph, you'll see that this cycle is almost the worst cycle there is. It's right around where the 2016 halving year is, but just look how similar these are. They are kind of in line. If you look at where they are when they end the second quarter, they are very, very similar in terms of performance. Now, if you guys watched my recent videos, I mentioned Goldman Sachs reported their 13F filings. They bought more Bitcoin. We've got a lot more. One of the top hedge funds in Europe with 30 billion in assets under management has disclosed almost 500 million in spot Bitcoin ETFs. But that isn't it. They also are loading up on some Bitcoin miners. We have Daniel Sundheim's D1 Capital. They built up their Bitcoin mining position with stocks like bitdeer, Iris Energy or Iron, and Hut 8. Of those, I do own Iron. And of those three, bitdeer is actually the most efficient apparently. I'll show you an outdated graph showing that, but we are going to go over bitdeer briefly in this video. They are apparently the most efficient miner. But keep in mind, they are the only Singapore-based miner of this list. Who knows if their numbers are fudged or not. They are the most efficient by a mile. Looks like Hut 8 is getting into AI more. Iris Energy also expects to generate 17 million annually from its AI. That's very small compared to BitDigital, surprisingly. We also have UBS adding shares of bitdeer, Bitfarms, BitDigital. They really like the bits. Also Hut 8, more than 5 million into Iron. And all of this equates to about a 27% increase in institutional adoption. According to 13F filings, 1,199 professional firms held investments in US spot Bitcoin ETFs as of June 30, marking an increase of 262 firms over the quarter. While retail investors hold the majority of the float in terms of spot Bitcoin ETFs, institutional investors increased their share of total assets under management by 2.41 percentage points, accounting for 21% in quarter 2. August 15, it looks like we had 25 million in outflows from Grayscale. You'll see this has been waning. Our worst day of what's shown here was a $182 million outflow day from Grayscale. Otherwise, they're under the 100 millions now pretty consistently. Their assets under management is slowly dwindling down, while all the other ETFs keep growing. Soon this GBTC exodus because of fees will be a non-issue. I'm not sure if this is the finalized numbers. We might be getting something from IBIT soon. It says 0. A lot of these are at 0. They might just not be out yet. But recently, things have been kind of slow with the spot Bitcoin ETFs. While there will be the outflow days, one thing you'll notice is IBIT literally like never posts an outflow. They do what they can. I think they're putting it into their own other funds and things like that to keep the consistent inflows. BlackRock doesn't want to lose any of that Bitcoin. BlackRock only wants to add more Bitcoin to their assets under management. And can you blame people for wanting to leave Grayscale when you see all these other ones that are at like a 0.25, 0.19 percentage fee when you have Grayscale at a 1.50? At some point, the ones that leave for better funds, lower fee funds, I should say, they will have exited, and the people that decide, screw it, I'll just stay with Grayscale, will have done so. And eventually we won't have these constant outflow numbers from Grayscale, and we'll have more and more consistent inflows. It's only a matter of time. Also, I'll leave the rest of this article down below for you, but I just wanted to get this snippet out. Growing M2 money supply could bolster Bitcoin's price. The ever-expanding global M2 supply could help Bitcoin break out above 60,000. During this last month, the Bank of Japan added $400 million, while the People's Bank of China added $97 billion worth of credit to the global money base, which expanded by 1.2 trillion. The money printer will keep printing money, whether we're talking about the US or any other country, and this money will inevitably flow, some of it, into Bitcoin. Hard assets will all go up in price as money continues to be printed. This is the way of the world. Now, I wanted to show you guys this outdated graph. It was from Cantor Fitzgerald, but just seeing how efficient bitdeer is compared to the competition. But keep in mind, bitdeer is a Singapore-based company. Maybe it's the fact that they're Singapore-based that they're so much more efficient. Maybe it's that they're able to fudge their numbers. I don't know. But just looking at this, bitdeer looks like the clear, best of the pack, with CLSK, my favorite, my top Bitcoin miner of all time, a distant second. And Riot, another Bitcoin miner I hold, as number 3. Looking at bitdeer, it looks like we're at a pretty important area right here. We're either going to hold this. I wouldn't say it's breaking down under it yet. I would want to see this close under this trend, and the market could obviously just ignore it and not care. But if we break this trend, we might head lower, might test our recent lows here in the 5s. They did just report earnings. They reported a loss. They did get a non-GAAP profit, a 20% beat there. They missed revenue. They reported 99 million in revenue. That was a decrease quarter over quarter. This is what pretty much all the miners have been posting because of the halving. That's honestly not that bad of a decrease in revenue considering we just got through the halving. And also, bitdeer was one that posted a profit pre-halving. Not many miners achieved that. CleanSpark was one, Iron was another one, BitDigital was one, Cypher I believe was one, bitdeer here was one, Bitfarms was unable to, TeraWolf was unable to, Sphere 3D was unable to. Some miners even posted 2 quarters of profitability pre-halving. bitdeer did not. As for earnings estimates, they do expect a decrease in revenue. This is somewhat in line with what other miners expect. They're also expecting an upcoming loss. Chart-wise, I think we're going to continue to see it kind of appreciate overall as Bitcoin goes up. One thing you'll notice here is the 4-hour at least is trying to set the same low, while the RSI has a higher low. Kind of depends on where this RSI goes though. I mean, if we just started tanking, this would obviously change it, but if we bounce here, this would show a nice bullish RSI divergence, and this might in fact be where we reverse. We're also facing this general resistance zone. I believe if we can break over this, depends on where we are obviously when we break it, since it's a descending resistance, it changes in time. But if we can break it by the end of August, right around 7, I would say a break of the psychological 7 can send bitdeer higher, and if we break it close to the end of August, it would probably show a break of this trend. And that could be what sends bitdeer on its next leg up. But I believe it's all really up to Bitcoin. Once Bitcoin goes on its next run, breaks those all-time highs, that's where all these miners collectively will go on their next run. The last couple months have been rough for the Bitcoin miners. We just got through the Bitcoin halving. They all took half the rewards now, moving forwards. And now we're basically waiting. It's a waiting game to see Bitcoin appreciate in price to make up for the halving, to make up for these Bitcoin miners taking half the rewards. What have we seen on every halving year for Bitcoin? We have seen it have a strong end of the year. I expect the same here. We're almost out of the Mt. Gox disbursements, and I do think this is one big thing that has been contributing to us sort of just getting this chop over the last few months, along with retail sentiment being at, in my opinion, its lowest since when we were back in the 30s and 20s. To me, we are clearly not in a euphoric time, but that euphoric time will come, and that's when it's time to begin thinking about taking profits, trimming, selling covered calls, so on and so forth. But let me know what your guys' plan is on this cycle? Do you plan on selling by the end of this year? Somewhere in the end of next year? Do you plan on just following the chart and kind of waiting and seeing? Hopefully you have a good weekend. Thanks as always, and I'll see you on the next one.